You are listening to Radio Alamundi.
Hi there, wherever you are. I'm Marco Excerpt, a freelance writer, reporter, producer, teacher, translator, tour guide, poet, singer, and songwriter. I speak several languages, and I'm the creator and founder of Radio Alamundi, an evolving podcast station where no language and all languages are spoken. It's a multilingual mix of music, poetry, lectures, languages, interviews, documentaries, recipes, and a lot more, co-produced with the students of the Alamundi International Cultural Center. You can find us on Linktree, Radio Alamundi, podcasts.apple.com, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Deezer, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky. Search for Radio Alamundi. The following narrative includes excerpts from 2 collections of testimonies and interviews. Let's Talk About It Anywhere in the World and the Universal Phrasebook of Indigenous Languages, UPIL, where it is all about the voices, accents, and speech patterns of Indigenous people anywhere in the world, hand in hand with my own personal anecdotes and observations. In addition to that, everybody is free to introduce themselves and speak their minds openly in their respective, often endangered languages and dialects, without any paraphrases or expectations. So, let the story go on from there. If you have ever learned a second language, you probably know that sometimes it is necessary to resort to signs and gestures as forms of communication. Their use is probably as old as mankind, because it has always been necessary to overcome hurdles and handicaps to understand one another. And if you have ever watched a stereotypical Hollywood Western, you might have seen Native Americans resort to this form of communication, especially in the Great Plains of North America. But actually, Indigenous sign languages have existed for the longest time all over the world. One of them is called Plains Indian Sign Language, which I hear about for the first time when I listen to a podcast in which guests discuss native sign languages, their historical significance, cultural practices, and revitalization efforts. And in the podcast, one of the guests is a man by the name of Floyd Favel. He clearly prides himself in his knowledge of the Cree language as his mother tongue and first language before English, and indicates that the Plains Indian Sign Language is his second language, also before English. That alone motivates me to eventually reach out and ask for an online interview from different places in the world. We're able to quickly figure out a date and time to set up a chat room in which Floyd Favel is going to tell me more about the Plains Indian Sign Language and sign language in general. And our conversation will not really go by the book in terms of asking questions and giving answers. Floyd Favel is almost going to give me a crash course by frequently repeating his comments in 3 languages: English, the Plains Indian Sign Language, and Cree. And it is even going to include storytelling, as well as a few specific tasks and exercises I'll end up giving Floyd Favel. At some point, I will also try to show Floyd what kind of a language learner I am and what I will have learned from him that day. But at the very beginning, I keep it simple and just let Floyd Favel introduce himself in English to give us a little more background information on what he does and who he is.
Yes, my name is Floyd Favel. My Cree name is Giskau Akutse, which means morning traveler. And I'm sitting here at the Poundmaker Museum and Gallery here in the province of Saskatchewan in Canada. The museum is a museum dedicated to the history of our people in our community, but also in general, Cree people, Cree and Assiniboine people. My great-grandfather, he fought in a battle here in 1885 when 50 Cree Assiniboine warriors defeated 350 Canadian soldiers when they attacked us here on May 2nd, 1885. I work as a theater director and theorist. I am creating, and I have created an Indigenous theater process in collaboration with Dr. Sabina Sweta Sen, a Bengali Polish dancer based in Poland. She has been working with me for the last 7 years, and our work continues. And we have some videos on our YouTube channel that demonstrate this method and process. And it's the only Indigenous theater process articulated in the world, and also in this country, Canada, and on Turtle Island. And I spent, I guess, my whole life developing this process. I was educated in Italy and in Denmark. I studied with the great Jerzy Grotowski, a Polish theater director. And it was from him, he encouraged me to develop my own Indigenous way of working, not to follow a conventional way of theater working and process, not to imitate, not to follow, but create my own method and process. Not method, I would say more a process, creative process. And to that end, me and Sabina, we've created exercises, a process, and we're currently making a performance that articulates, that demonstrates these ideas. Part of our process included the Plains Indian Sign Language. And I would say the Plains Indian Sign Language is one of the main cornerstones, the main tripod. If we think of a teepee that has three, Plains Indian Sign Language is one of those poles that is the base of our theater process and method. And so this is what is the base of what we're going to talk about today, and which is why you contacted me, which was the Plains Indian Sign Language. So that's my introduction.
So maybe now we know who Floyd Favel is and what he does, but there's more, especially languages, whether it is Cree or the Plains Indian Sign Language, both of which Floyd Favel is fluent in. So I end up asking him to introduce himself again in both of these languages. What languages do you speak?
My first language is Cree, the Cree language. I learned that from my parents and my community. And to this day, I still I speak it daily within my community. It's my working language, and as daily commerce, daily interactions with people, and also within my culture, because I'm also a traditionalist. I have made 4 sun dances in my life, and for that you need to speak the Indigenous language, because it's the Indigenous language that's the base. That's the communication tool with creation, with spiritual energies and forces. You communicate through the Indigenous language, and so you need to speak it. Unfortunately, my generation were the last ones to be fluent in our language. So that gives me thoughts of questions of I really don't know how it will be in 10 years or 20 years, like the health of our language and the health of our ceremonies and our people. So that's my first language. The second language was my grandmother was deaf. She wasn't born deaf; she became deaf over the years, and so I spent a lot of time with her, and so one of her communications to me was using sign. Of course, when you're young, you don't see this as Plains Indian Sign Language. You just see signs and you understand what she wants. And at that time, I wasn't familiar of or understand what is Plains Indian Sign Language because you're young, right? I just seen signs and I would understand what she's talking about. And then and then over the years, I did see a Plains Indian Sign Language speaker, an old Assiniboine man. When I was a student in Italy, I came home and I attended a Sundance near Regina, Saskatchewan, just above the border of Saskatchewan. And an old man, he called me over and he made some gestures. So curious, I went over and I asked him, "What does that mean?" And he said, "Get off your horse and sit on the ground." And he chuckled. I said, "Oh, okay." So I sat down. Of course, I wasn't on a horse. I was in the. I sat down and then he made some more signs. I said, "So do you speak that language, sign language?" I asked him. He says, "Oh, yes, I do." He said, "Oh, show me some more." I said. So he made some more signs, and I could recognize some of them from my grandmother's signs, and then so that was my first as a theater student, my first reintroduction into the possibilities of sign and what it could be. And then so through my work with Dr. Lanny Reelbird from Montana, he has been coming to our community to teach sign, revive it, because it's been lost in our community. So we have revived it, and it's a good learning tool to learn the Cree oral language. And then from there, the language verging into dance and theater, my work with Dr. Sabina Swetasen, we have taken that further as one of the foundational poles, we could say, of our theater process. And she is able to internalize it and present it as part of our storytelling and our work. So that's 3-part, 4-part process of sign and Indigenous language. And then, of course, English. Then second, I speak English, and but to that end, not very good, and grammar is not very good, especially. But I write in English. All my essays, all my dramas, everything I wrote in English, and it's taken me a long time to plant that English language into my Indigenous worldview, and it begins to inform structure and composition. And so the structure and composition of some of my writings has started to change to reflect my Indigenous worldview. And then while I worked in Italy, of course, we in our interactions with the people in the community, with the city and the town, I was able to function in the Italian language as I went about my daily business, but not good enough to read Dante or understand Dante's writings, nothing like that. Not good enough to be philosophical or write in it, of course. And but just I would say daily pidgin Italian, you could say, like just enough to communicate with people because we didn't work in Italian with Grotowski. We didn't work in that language. We worked within our own cultures, our own. So actually, I worked in my Cree language when I worked with Grotowski in Italy. And the daily language as a company was English, and and Grotowski, he spoke French, so he would speak French with his intellectual colleagues from around the world. French and English was his daily language. So those were the languages I worked in now. And then sign, Plains Indian sign is all indigenous languages in North America. So you could say through sign, I'm able to communicate with all indigenous people, which is like hundreds. So that's a bridge into many ways of communication and many ways of interacting with people.
How would you introduce yourself, number one, verbally in the Cree language, and number two, visually in sign language?
Good question. This what you just asked me is so. For example, one of my premises in Indigenous performance research is it's based on storytelling. Storytelling has a few main components: narrative, action, image, sign and gesture, face, light and shadow, intergenerationality, and multidimensionality. Those are its main components. In narration, there is incarnation, there is imitation, and there's also ways of introducing yourself. That's part of every storyteller always introduces themselves in their traditional way. So what you just asked me is a good question. It means that you're knowledgeable, you've done your research. So I would say, if I introduce myself, I would go, how? I would raise my hand in peace. I'm saying I have no weapon in my hand. I come with open hand. I am at your grace. You know, I'm dependent on you. I have nothing in my hands. I say, how? My name is Morning Traveler. Kiski Komanna. Kiski Komanna Eotian. I come from Broken Knife. Nenehiawan, I speak Cree. Mi tenewa pamtak atam skatak. I look at you and I enjoy, I see you and I meet you and I shake hands with each and every one of you. That would be that's my basic standard opening, you could say, when I meet my own people. And also when I meet other tribes, I will speak my language. Because they say when you speak your language, use your language, even though people don't understand, you are acknowledging your ancestors through your speech. And you are telling those people who you are, and you have a language and you have a culture. You're telling them that through your presentation. And through your sign, they understand you as you're talking. You're using sign.
Cree and the Plains Indian Sign Language have a lot in common. They're both indigenous and use notions and concepts that are foreign to modern Euro-American logic. How old is the Plains Indian Sign Language?
Well, there is historical documentation and indigenous legends that talk about they use signs to communicate. And of course, then that means at least it's within documented history they were using signs. But then in traditionally, what Dr. Lanny Reelbird from the Crow Nation, he says, the Great Spirit gave us sign language, as a way to communicate with each other and all of his children, all of his people on Turtle Island. Ministic, and in Cree Ministic, it just means island, and which is North America. And how old? You could say sign language is as old as human impulse, as human gesture, as human body, and as old as two people meeting from different tribes, then that's how old it is.
What concepts of time, dates, and seasons do you have in your native language, and how are they put into practice in today's world?
Well, the most easiest way I could for now is sunrise. That's and then midday, and then sunset, and then nighttime, midnight. Those are its primary. Those are its primary divisions. So let's just say you're gonna tomorrow. Let's just say you're having a ceremony tomorrow, and you start with a feast. Somebody would say, "Dansby, when? When do you start?" And you say, "Midday." Midday. And when are you heading out? You say Wapake, tomorrow, sunrise. So you mark out the basic division of time is the movement of the sun. But if you're talking about nighttime, then the movement of the nighttime. So the sun is under, midnight is under. So you make that sign for midnight, under. So nighttime this, daytime this, nighttime this. So under, it's under the sun. So underneath the earth, you could say. So the basic division is sun. For the longer periods, like then the earth is, the year is divided into 13 moons. And our teepee reflects that. Our teepee, each pole, the 13 poles inside, they represent one of the seasons, one of the moons, because the teepee is a feminine idea. It's a feminine construct, you could say. So it represents all the moons, because the teepee represents a dress of an old woman. And so when we are inside a teepee, we are inside a womb. And so we are inside a body. And those poles, yes, there are bones, they represent the bones. And how possibly when we are in the womb ourselves, when we look out into the world, the skin, human skin is transparent. So outside is kind of transparent. We see light. So, and those bones, we see the bones of our mother, like, and the reflection. So now time is represented by each moon, 13 moons. So actually we had a lunar yearly cycle, and each moon has a story, has a name to it, according to what happens in that year, or according to its legend. Because the moons themselves, the months, they are also different creation beings in the origin of time, define themselves and divided, give a moon to each other. And So, for example, Kisamantu Pisim is sort of like in January. That means Great Spirit Moon, because everything always begins with a Great Spirit. That's the first pole on that side of the door, on the right-hand side of it. That's the first pole. And so on and so forth. Every pole now has a moon and a story. So we divide time yearly by the moons. And globally, no, how do you say, in a universal way, I guess in Hindu, they call him Yuga, Kali Yuga. But with us here, Cree people, this is the fourth world. We are in the fourth world. The ones previous were destroyed by different spiritual and environmental cataclysms. And this is the fourth one. And so in terms of a broad universal time, that's another way. This is how we express this time.
Where do you draw the line between spirituality and science?
Spirituality and science?
Right.
You could say, well, the most common one is in Cree we say "Kahkyoya Chakut," means everything is spirit, everything is energy. That's how life is told to us. And but that's the basics of physics as well. Like all life is energy, everything is in movement, and that's one of its parallels. That's one of its meeting points. Is that primary principle? It's a primary one. It's the first one. All life is related, and with science and the other thing I always is that's interesting is like spiritual phenomena of our spiritual people. Some of them who could work with fire, eat fire, also transport themselves in different places. I guess that reveals to us the scientific principle that everything is molecular and transparent. That and so is the body, and so is everything. Even this wall, it's molecular. It's scientifically it's possible to walk through a wall because it's molecular and you're molecular. So scientifically, that's possible. Scientifically, it's possible for me to enter this computer and come and sit beside you. Scientifically, that's possible. Those are facts, scientific facts. And so science actually resembles, or we could say science is spirituality. I guess for Indigenous people, our difference with maybe modern society is we have faith. Something created all this, a universal intelligence. We call that one the Great Spirit. And we respect the Great Spirit. We bow our head to the Great Spirit. We have faith. And with our Cree people, we say, Great Spirit, Kisemanetu. It doesn't indicate anywhere in there a man, a male. It doesn't indicate that. Kisemanetu just means great kindness energy. That's what that means, Kisamanatu. So we say then, the elders say, this world is created and is sustained by kindness, by love. That's what they say.
And so you were saying how in the Cree language you speak to the Great Spirit, to the Creator.
Mm-hmm. I was saying, just to pick up is the Great Spirit. The Great Spirit is called it is called Kishamanito. Means it's taken from the word Kishewatsun, kindness. And mantu is a form. It's just it means energy, spirit, profound, spiritual energy and force. So that's those are the two words of that what we call in English the Great Spirit or God. And but at no point in there is it indicates a male or a man. At no point in there does it do that. And it's only the idea when we became colonized that by priests that and indoctrinated that idea became dominant. That God is a man, and so that's in science you could say because the question was science and spirituality. Then you could say because Kishimanatu, the Great Spirit, it is a man, woman, and son. They are a family. The Great Spirit is a family. And man, woman, son, and the teepee, the tripod, is one of the representations and meanings of the tripod, is that principle of man, woman, and son. And the family. And so the tripod, you could say, is it's the foundation of our mind, it's the foundation of our home, it's the foundation of our worldview, that tripod. The Great Spirit is the foundation. And then if you think about it scientifically, then what is the meaning of an atom? A proton, neutron, electron. And we say the Great Spirit is everywhere. That's what we say. But then also you could scientifically, you could say the atom is everywhere. The atom is everything. The Great Spirit is everything. The Great Spirit is everywhere. So are these, then it makes in your mind, are these related, these two ideas? And so they possibly are, and they could be. I don't want, with all respect, I don't want to be sacrilegious and say the Great Spirit is an atom, because we must always revere the Great Spirit. So I have the idea is the atomic world is a trace and a remnant of the power and energy of the Great Spirit. It is not the Great Spirit. Just to be clear, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's a trace. It's an evidence. It's a trail. Like if, it's its wake. You know how a canoe leaves a wake, an energy like a ripples. The ripples, the atomic world ripples. That's a trace of the Great Spirit. So that's if we talk scientifically, those are some of the relationships I found, but it's all encompassing. You could say it's a unified theory is the Indigenous people, they created a unified theory of the Great Spirit, a unified theory of energy and power. They created that.
I also use video communication as a tool to show Floyd Favel different things such as colors and symbols. And I give him a few examples to see how he would express them in his native languages. How can we express colors in sign language?
Within sign, colors are, you have to put, in the moment, you have to point to something that's white, for example, this paper. Then I would say white, white buffalo. I point to something. If I say another color, I point to it and then give another sign of so that's how we express colors in sign. Sign has to be understood that sign is a direct way of communication. As best as possible, you are trying to talk to somebody from another tribe, another nation who does not speak your language. So Lanny Realbird, my teacher, he always says, sign is basic communication between people. And that's what, therefore the colors are indicative of that basic practical aspect of sign.
The first sign is a line, a simple straight line. So how would you express that in sign language and in Cree?
A line. This. Mm-hmm.
And how is that in Cree?
It depends. You would say it tepahaman means just means a measurement, like a border.
The second symbol is equals.
Okay, equal. You just go like this. Balanced. Now, or else 1 + 1 equals. You go forward, make a sign forward, and you show the result of something happening, two things happening, and then put them together, and the result is this. So that's how you would do it. Yeah. I would say you measured it. Yeah, you measured it, and it came to this. In Nahitaman, you achieved like a satisfaction. You're satisfied with a result.
So basically in English, it's the circle.
Mm-hmm.
So again, in Navajo, it's nasbas, which also means 0. So if you see me do that, first of all, what does it mean to you? And how would you represent a circle and or 0 and the concept of 0 in sign language and in Cree?
Well, if I seen you do that, I would say it means two things. It depends on context, first of all. The first one means my first idea, if you were talking and you did that, that means all encompassing. You're taking all into consideration if you're talking about something and you went like that, all encompassing, all into consideration. Now, that's what 0 means mathematically. So you could say that's what 0 means. Second thing is if you did that if you're meeting and talking, that means you're circling around, but you're going to focus on something. But you haven't focused on it yet. You're just circling around your thinking, your broad general thinking. That's what that means. Third sign, what that could mean is you're talking about a camp of teepees.
A circle is frequently used as a sign of perfection, which has a lot to do with different concepts of beauty. How do you define beauty?
Well, two things. First of all, we don't, everybody's beautiful. That's the main idea. We don't say, so everybody, first of all, if it's physical between people, the idea everybody is beautiful. Because we also keep in mind that everybody is the Great Spirit's children. We are raising children for the Great Spirit. Those are not our children. So we can't call people not beautiful. Those are the Great Spirit's children. So we just, for everything good, beautiful, you do this. You make a gesture like good, and maybe a sign like yes, like good. Or you raise your hand to the heavens, to the sky. With these two gestures, you go straight in front of you from your chest, miyasin, miyasin. And you raise your hand to acknowledge the Great Spirit. Great Spirit made this beauty in this person, in how everything looks, in this horse, in this everything, in this car. Like it's like, oh, miyasin, that's a good car. You know, this something simple like that is also like a profound. You're expressing beauty. So there you go.
So, sign language is a basic form of communication. But there can always be misunderstandings, which is what happens to Floyd Favel and me at some point during our conversation when I try to show him what I've learned already from him in the Plains Indian Sign Language. Well, let's see how good a learner I am. I'm going to try to speak to you in sign language now.
Mm-hmm.
What am I saying?
I don't know what you meant by the last sign, but from what I would say is, I would say it's good. The Great Spirit is good. You love beauty. It's beautiful. Black is beautiful, is what you just said.
How do you overcome misunderstandings in sign language?
Um, well, there's the funny story of these Indians. They went to the Vatican and they went to go see the Pope. And then the Pope came out. He made a gesture like, and so and those Indians got mad and they walked away. And then they said, "Hey, why are you walking away?" And he said, "Well, he just told us, take down your teepees and get out of here." So, because this in the sign of the cross, right? To them, they understood he made a teepee sign, and then he went like this, take them down. He made a broad sweeping gesture from the left to the right. So that's a misunderstanding that could happen. It's like I guess in that little story, the indigenous people, they're indicating, yes, sign language misunderstandings happen. Also, through my reading, these Lakota warriors, they chased down some soldiers. The soldiers ran back into their fort, Fort Laramie, and no, the Fetterman Fort. This was just before the Fetterman battle, where they killed 80 soldiers. So in the winter, so the Lakotas chased those soldiers down. But then the Lakotas thought they didn't want to run into the fort, they'll get shot. But those soldiers that from their gate, they were making some signs, or to the Lakotas, they understood they were making signs. They understood, the Lakotas said, they understood the soldiers were saying, we're hungry, we're going to go into the fort and eat. And that's what the Lakotas understood them as saying. So the Lakotas signed back and said, come over here, we'll make you full with a battle. We'll fill you with a battle. Come over here. And That was it gives you what can happen, like understanding translation. And I think with translation, just try it again with misunderstandings. And it always depends on context, what you are talking about in the moment. That's what sign is based on. We can't you will misunderstand if out of the blue you start telling me things and I'm thinking, well, we never talked about it yet. So I don't understand what you're saying because it's not in our frame of reference in the moment that we're talking. So it's context. So that's how you avoid misunderstandings.
Generally, I have a couple of recurrent questions about sounds and phrases, but in this case, I'm interested in the visual aspects of a language like the Plains Indian Sign Language. What is the coolest sign you've seen recently?
Oh, okay. I would say the coolest sign would be what I like is the sign that I always like is means thank you. It means kinanaskumten. In English, you'd say thank you, but it means more than thank you. It means I am grateful, I am humble, and I put my hands in front and I run them down your energy field in the front from the head down to the floor. And I feel blessed by your presence. And my hands are open and I exchange my energy with you and I bless your energy. That's thank you. So in sign, that's what it all means, what I just said.
As soon as my interview with Floyd Favel was set up and scheduled, I knew that I was going to bring up a Bob Dylan song going back to the 1970s that he recorded for and with Eric Clapton. It's entitled Sign Language. I repeat the main chorus line to Floyd Favel twice, just to see how he reacts and how he would express it in the Plains Indian Sign Language. You speak to me in sign language as I'm eating a sandwich in a small cafe at 2:45. How would you translate this Bob Dylan quote into Plains Sign Language? So I repeat it to you. You speak to me in sign language as I'm eating a sandwich in a small cafe at 2:45.
Okay, so like this, you speak to me in sign. I eat in a cafe at 2:45. So I'm doing midday, not sunset, halfway between that point. That's how I do it in sign.
As part of my conversations with people, I often have them ask questions, either specifically for someone I know I'm going to chat with in the near future, or broadly for anyone I might speak with anytime, anywhere in the world. As a result, 2 questions are available for Floyd Favel. The first comes from an Indigenous gardener, author, writer, and food advocate. She is Ojibwe and Dakota, and her name is Teresa Peterson. Her question is inspired by the notion of maintaining old traditions in the preparation of food, which Floyd Favel takes a notch further in his answer, talking about art and creation.
What's a tradition that you continue to carry on, preferably around foods, that you hope to pass on to the next generation? And why do you do it?
Well, a couple of things. Old traditions, they are an art, a sacred art. You are making beautiful things, beautiful structures. You are singing, you are dancing, you're making sometimes a moon, a sand moon, like if you're a member of Native American church. You have fans, you have like feathered fans. Sundance, you're making a beautiful lodge, a universal lodge, a global lodge. That is the house of the spirits. And this is for all humanity and all the universe. So it's a sacred art. And yes, it's hard, but all art, as you practice it, takes intense effort and energy. And so as an art, it is difficult. And because it must be difficult to make something truthful and beautiful. So that's, I think that's what I'm answering in your question. And the other thing you had mentioned earlier was your friend there, Miss Peterson, is that universality of Indigenousness. So, for example, in our research, myself and Dr. Sabina Swetasen, the principle of Indigenous performance is it's an artistic genre that is open to all people, but it's based on Indigenous methods and techniques, and that we must include all people in any artistic discipline. So that takes us into the sacred art of ritual performance, ritualness. And so for myself, as a ceremonialist, and many of my people believe this in our area, Cree people, we believe they are universal and that what we call non-Indigenous, they are welcomed in there to take part. Here on Turtle Island, Wahkutahayakuk means we are making them related and part of this sacred island when they take part. They are our brothers, they are our sisters, they are our relatives. They are our companions, everything. They are part of us, we are part of each other.
The next question comes from another Indigenous woman. She is based in the state of Washington and belongs to the Yakima and Nez Perce nations. Her full name is Haliana Cougar Trax Dekoto Little Bull. In one of her tribes, she belongs to the Water Clan, which is what her question about people's effects on their surroundings reflects.
What is your ripple effect?
The ripple effect, how I understand your question is, so for example, in Cree, eventually I will be the great grandparent of somebody behind me. I also have great grandparents in front of me. So a long time ago, the word great grandparent implies wagon, implies pulling. Because a long time ago, this comes from an elder, he told me this. Louis Bird from Manitoba, he told me. I asked him, does the word great grandparent have anything to do with wagon, that word chapan, to pull? And he says, yes. A long time ago, when we moved camps in the woods, we would put our old people in a toboggan and we pull them. So behind you, you leave like a trail, snow, like a movement, and in front you're pure snow, nothing. But you yourself, you're going forward. So that's one way I understand your ripple effect. We're pulling our ancestors, their teachings, their knowledge, their wisdom, their ways of being in the universe. We're pulling them forward. And behind us, we leave a wake, a trail, many trails, in fact, much movement. But in front of us is empty white snow.
Eventually, it is Floyd Favel's turn to ask a question for anyone, anytime, anywhere in the world. It is very personal, because it's something he asks himself on a daily basis, he explains to me, before he tries to phrase it properly in English, in the Plains Indian Sign Language, and in the Cree language. What question or questions would you want to share with anyone, anytime, anywhere in the world right now?
What questions? Let's see. That's a different. Let me quickly think on that with the world and with this platform of the iPod. No, the this medium we're using, which is you told me you have a global audience. Is I guess the question I would ask anybody is the question I ask myself. I can't ask questions that are not related to what I do or what I am. And my question always to me is how how am I in my personal life, in my personal work, in my personal explorations? How am I manifesting it in my outer world, in the outer world, in daily life? So, for example, let's talk about environmentalism and the world, the trees, the water, and so on. How I ask that question to myself is, how do I do that for real in within this dimension that we live in? Is and I thought, well, one way is to go off grid, to build my house, to build in a natural environment, to respect the water, to respect the, I guess in that way, be off grid. This is how I solved for myself answering that question, because I didn't want to be talking about environmentalism and without me doing it. I didn't want to talk about language and culture without me doing it, being a practitioner of it. So, so those are the questions I ask myself. How do I live within my questions, the global question, the societal questions, the personal questions? How am I within that? So that's what so by my question, I'm just sharing with you, maybe that's my question to the world, to this audience that's listening.
So if I use that in sign language.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. All encompassing, everything you, in relation to that maybe, but you'd have to do this in relation. So you do this circle, you, relationship.
The time has come to end our conversation. but an end is a foreign concept in many indigenous languages, including Cree and the Plains Indian Sign Language. In other words, saying goodbye is a foreign idea. So, Floyd Favel and I talk about it for a while and leave it there until we meet again. And the story goes on from there. In Quechua it is Tinkunakama. In Navajo it is Hagone. But it doesn't mean goodbye. It means until we see each other next time.
Yes. You say, Itam Kawapamten Utenikan. We will see you again in the future. Thank you. Yes, Miasen, I thank you as well. And I greet all the listeners of this program. Me too, I wish them peace, understanding, and a good feeling.